They're like, I got into this because, I enjoyed working with my hands. And now you tell me I need to be a stinking media company. Believe it or not, yep, that's what I'm telling you. And you got to get over yourself because you're an entrepreneur. And the moment you became an entrepreneur, you said, I'm giving up my right to complain about what the market wants. And if the market wants to watch the thing online with video, then that's what I'm going to give them. The tragedy is there any more aesthetic of an industry in the world than the paint contracting space? There's no more aesthetic industry in the world.
Welcome to the Base Coat Brainiac podcast. My name is Austin Hauser. I am Chief Brainiac over here at Base Coat Marketing. If you own a painting business and you're listening in, you're in the right place. Now, today, I have a thought leader from the marketing world, author of the book, They Ask, You Answer, Marcus Sheridan. And Marcus, I'm going to make your head big for a second here. The content strategies you define in your book, They Ask, You Answer, have single-handedly changed the way we operate here at Base Coat Marketing. I read your book about 5 years ago. And it's literally required reading material on our content team. So first of all, thank you for offering that timeless piece of work. And more importantly, thank you for taking the time to provide our audience with some value today.
You got it, brother. Well, I just appreciate the fact that you're taking action, right? That's the great divide, those that do and do not take action. So hat tip to you for that.
Amen, dude. It's I always say success favors action. And I think people get confused about what action looks like. Like you have to do it the same day you learn about it, right? It's not about waiting for next week or anything.
Well, Jim Rohn talks about, one of my favorite mentors was Jim Rohn, R-O-H-N, for those that are listening. And he talks about this thing called the law of diminishing intent. And essentially just the law of diminishing intent means as soon as we get a prompting to do something, the whole key is that we do it in that moment, because every single time we push it off, then the intent diminishes eventually to the point where we forget that we even ever had the intent in the first place. Right. And so you see it a lot, especially, I speak for a living, right? So I'm going to all these events, people get fired up and go back to the office and back in the weeds, and they just forget, or they just get so involved with the other stuff that they never apply the thing that they learned at the event, which is sad, right?
Yeah.
Again, that's why there's winners and losers in business.
I was at an event before where the person sitting next to me had implemented what the presenter was talking about before he was even done presenting. And that's whenever my eyes opened up. I'm like, oh, that's what quick action means.
Yeah.
So it is not about making a checklist that you're going to get to next week or next month or next year, right? It is about going. So today, what I'd really like to do is introduce our audience to the concepts of content marketing that you've written about, and just the powerful mindset shift in marketing and getting away from the sales-driven language and more into the question and answer language. So before we get too far into it though, Marcus, I'd like to start with you. Who is Marcus Sheridan? How'd you get here? Give us a brief rundown of your story.
Yeah. So I started a swimming pool company with a couple buddies out of college in 2001. It's called River Pools. And things were going okay up until 2008 when we had the market collapse. But the cool thing about, bad economic conditions, Austin, is that's when innovation occurs, because you say, okay, YOLO, got nothing to lose here. Might as well just send it, right?
That's right.
And so it was during that period of time that I really started to research online about inbound marketing, content marketing, social media, all that stuff. And really what I heard in my simple pool guy mind was, Marcus, if you just obsess over your customers' questions and you're willing to address those online, on your website, on social, etc., you might save your business. So I just brainstormed every single question I'd ever received, because I'd been selling swimming pools in homes for, better part of 7-8 years at that point, and started answering them online, certainly on our website, through articles, through videos. Make a long story short, we became the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. And then as that occurred, we blew up into what was a manufacturer of fiberglass pools. And then we became the first franchise of fiberglass pools in the U.S. And I was able to sell the manufacturing and the franchising company in 2020, but I still own the original River Pools in Virginia. So I'm essentially like a franchisee. But during this whole journey, I started to write about the things that I was doing, And as I was writing about that, I started getting invites to different events. Austin, like, hey, Marcus, can you share that story about your swimming pool company here? Can you teach us that strategy? Which led to me essentially starting a coaching company, which today is called Impact, and it led to a book called They Ask You Answer. The book They Ask You Answer came out in 2017, and then it came out again in 2020, and now a new edition called Endless Customers, which is They Ask You Answer 3.0. It's coming out this year, April. And so that's been the journey. It's been wild, man. Really, really wild. But it's crazy how really just obsessing over how our buyers think and being willing to address that online could lead to this extraordinary life that I've had. I never would have dreamt possible.
It's so good. And, whenever I first got into the marketing world, I leveraged social media from a pretty early on time frame and standpoint of I would actually monitor Facebook groups that was industry specific, right? So we serve painting companies, and I would monitor groups for the pain points and the questions that these guys would bring up, right? Because I don't run a painting company. I know how to market them. But at the end of the day, I found value in answering those questions. And I think where a lot of guys look at is like, is there search volume out there? Like what keyword difficulty is that, right? And it's like, no. Answer the question. Answer the question. And then I stumbled across your book, which you did a fantastic job of breaking it down scientifically. So which I want to let's actually get into the weeds about this. I believe a successful marketing strategy consists of just a few things, right? It's setting the proper expectations, it's being proactive, and it's measuring the results. In your book, you talk about the power of answering customer questions proactively before they're asked. Yeah. So break that down for us. What does that look like?
Well, the greatest way in life to resolve a concern is to address it before it becomes a concern. And so in every conversation that's happening in every industry, as businesses, we have a choice. We can either be a part of the conversation and they can learn from us, or we can ignore the conversation that's happening and they can learn from someone else. So this is the thing that you have to say, do I want my potential customers learning the thing, whatever the thing is, from me, right? And so in the book They Ask You Answer, we talk about basically there's 5 subjects that every single buyer wants to know when they're researching. And we are prolific researchers today, and that's only increased over the course of time. We're more informed than we've ever been. And so we call these the big 5. And they dictate the economy of search. They dictate the questions people ask. And if it's okay with you, Austin, I'll just rip them off here.
Go for it.
Is that all right with you?
Yep.
So as buyers and consumers, and this is a prolific when it comes to home improvement, we want to know, number one, roughly how much does it cost? It's why every single person that's listening to this right now has gotten a phone call from a potential customer, and that person has said, I'm not going to hold you to it, but like, give me a sense, roughly, what are we looking at here? Right? Number one question that people have. Number 2, as buyers, consumers, we want to know, all right, if I make this choice, what could go wrong? So how could this blow up in my face? What are the potential problems or negatives? Not just the pros, but the cons as well. So that's when we get very interested in, like when we're very interested in something, we want to know, how does this go wrong? That's number 2, problems. Number 3 is comparisons. We love to compare stuff online. You're constantly comparing things online. We all are. And so most companies don't like to compare stuff online, which is dumb because the buyers want to know. Number 4, reviews. We're obsessed with reviews. The thing about reviews, we don't just want the good reviews. We want the good, the bad, and the ugly reviews. And then finally, number 5, best. So think about how many times you've gone online and searched best or most or top or anything that really denotes some type of ranking or extreme. So cost, problems, comparisons, reviews, best. That's what's known as the big 5. It runs the economy of search. And everybody that's listening to this right now has probably at this point done thousands of searches related to those 5 phrases. And what's wild, Austin, is most companies, when it comes to the content they're putting out there, text, video, whatever, they're not talking about that stuff. That's a problem.
Yes, absolutely. And let's break this down, because I'm hoping that I can get this in front of every single client we manage and any future clients that we have the opportunity to manage. Let's talk about pricing, right? Because this is where I know this holds a special place in your heart. You have a new product on the SaaS side for this, which I want you to discuss as well. But look, we were planning on adding pricing calculators to every client website. And I felt like, hey, look, our team's doing development. Like we're in the testing process. We stumbled across your product. And I felt really good about this. We've done some split testing. The results are fantastic.
Yep.
But man, did we get pushback, right? Most of our clients are not the cheapest. And in fact, I would go to argue that most of them are probably the most expensive in their market. So what do you say to business owners who don't want to put pricing information on their website or a calculator because they're afraid of attracting, I don't know, a price conscious shopper?
Yeah. So, I have spoken more on this singular subject than any person in the world. I have more data on it than any single person in the entire world. That's not an exaggeration. And so let's just look at psychology of buyers for a second. And as I'm talking to this listener, I want you to really reflect on how you are when you're researching something online. So if I said right now to all your listeners, have you researched how much something costs online in the last year? Everybody would say yes. And if I said, and when you're on a website and you're researching cost and price and you can't find anything about it, what's the emotion you experience? You say, I get super frustrated. And I say, well, why do you get frustrated? Well, I get frustrated because I'm just trying to make a buying decision here. And I don't like being ignorant. I'm trying to give you my money, but you're making it really hard. Okay. So in that moment of frustration, when you can't find it, what do? Well, what you don't do is you don't keep looking on that website. What you also don't do is you don't call that company anymore. Instead, you keep looking and you look until someone's willing to give you roughly an answer. And then generally speaking, that's who you're going to give your business to. We know this as facts. Anybody's listening to this right now. And oh, by the way, as you're listening to this right now, you're going to be tempted to say, but my business is different. Oh, I assure you, your business is not different and it's definitely not special because neither is my swimming pool company. My pool company is the same as your painting company if you're listening to this right now. What we're trying to do is we're trying to win the battle of trust every single day. In order to do that, we got to resolve a bunch of questions, worries, issues, fears, concerns of buyers. The fundamental question is how much does it cost? Now, there's 3 reasons why contractors don't like to talk about cost and price online. Let's dispel each one of these terrible myths. First one is, well, if I share my pricing and they see I'm more expensive, well, then I just might scare them away. Actually, that's not true whatsoever. The thing that actually scares us away online is ignorance. When we can't find anything, that's what scares us away. It's no different than, if you're at a restaurant and you're looking at the lobster, but it says market price, that scares you away a lot more than an actual price next to it. So that's number one. This idea of we're more expensive will scare them away. No, what scares people away, and this is facts, there's no debate here, is when they can't find what they're looking for. In fact, let me talk about that too. Just one more second. Let's say we drew the customer journey as a straight line, and when they start their journey, it's the day they say, "I need to paint my home," or "I need to, redo the, our bedrooms," or whatever it is. Okay, so it's the moment they know I need a painter. One of the first things they want to know before they reach out to anybody is, roughly, what are we looking at here? It is the fundamental question. So the number one reason in the world why people leave a website is because they can't find what they're looking for. The number one thing they're looking for is a sense, not an exact, but a sense for pricing. And so when they start the journey, the buyer's journey, and they're going down this research, they get pricing information and they're able to say, okay, I've got a sense for it. Now I know I'm in the game. I can move on. And so then they do the rest of their legwork and research. Then they reach out to a company. Then they meet with a salesperson. And at the end of that, they get the price again, but now it's exact. So there's 2 major points of pricing in every buyer's journey, the very beginning and the very end. That's how it should be. Now, I agree that you shouldn't be doing it in the middle. It should be at the very beginning, I'm in the game, and at the very end, now I know exactly what it's going to be. Do I move forward or not? Okay, so that's the first reason why is I don't want to scare people away. The second reason why contractors say, I can't talk about cost and price is because they say, well, every job is different. And that's true. But if I went to you or any contractor and I said, can you help me understand the factors that would drive the cost of a job up? You'd say yes. If I said, can you help me understand the factors that would drive the cost of a job down? You'd say yes. If I said, can you help me understand, you gave me a quote. I got a quote from some of your competitors. Can you help me understand why there's such a delta? And you'd say, yeah, of course I can help you understand that. And of course, anybody that's listening to this right now, they've had to answer those questions many times over the years if they're in sales whatsoever, right? And so the whole idea of it depends or every job is different is the easiest and most fundamental to explain. which is why you should have a great pricing page on your website that teaches them about the process of understanding value in the painting industry. What drives cost up? What drives cost down? Why are some companies expensive? Why are some companies cheap? And then I would say roughly, where does your typical project fall? Now, in most industries, though, Austin, there's a 3-tier system of pricing. What I mean by that, there's like this lower end, middle of the road, and high end. And sometimes we'll call it, there's a luxury too.
Good, better,
And so
best.
that's right. Yeah, good, better, best, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so you can also explain those. So that is the second reason. It depends. This is the second reason why we don't like to talk about cost and price as contractors. Third reason why we don't talk about cost and price outside of if we're too expensive, we might scare them away. And outside of it depends, it's, well, I don't want my competitors to see my pricing. And that's pretty ridiculous too. Because if I go to any contractor and I said that has any experience, do you have a pretty decent sense as to what the local contractors in your area charge? They'd all say, yeah, absolutely. So this is the big secret, non-secret. Everybody acts like nobody knows what everybody's charging, when in reality, everybody has a decent sense as to what everybody's charging. But the thing that people misconstrue the most about this, and I'm starting to convert your listeners, but there's still some resistors there right now, Austin.
Yes, for
And
sure.
so folks, stay with me, okay? Is you do not have to put an exact price. That's the misnomer. But what you do have to do is you've got to teach value. You've got to help them understand how the market works. Now, there's essentially 5 levels of discussing pricing on a website. 5 levels. We're going to call them level 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Level 0 is what most contractors have, which is a button that says pricing or get quote, and then it takes them to a landing page where there's a form. The person has to fill it out, and all they do is get pissed off because they didn't get any information that they wanted. Okay.
Yep.
So notice I call that level 0 because you haven't done squat in terms of value for the homeowner. All you've done is frustrate them, just like you yourself want to get frustrated. That's level 0. Level 1. Level 1 is when you have a great pricing page on your website. And in the new book, Endless Customers, there is what we call the perfect pricing page. And there's like 17 different elements of a perfect pricing page. But this is where you really take the time to teach them with text and with images what that would look like. Okay, so that's level 1. And by the way, you should have a pricing page on your website where there's a tab in your navigation bar that says pricing. And then when they click on that tab, then they read that page and they really explain value and they see the different tiers. And now they're saying, finally, somebody was willing to help me with this. This is so helpful. Level 2. Level 2 is when you do the same thing as we just described with the pricing page, but you do a video. And this is really important when it comes to painting because it's very aesthetic, right? So there's a very big, to really help someone understand value, they got to see the difference between what is low, middle of the road, high end. What are some of those extra, like above and beyonds that the more expensive contractors do that some of the other ones do not do, right? So that matters a whole bunch. So that is your level 2. Now level 3 is really going to take the world by storm, and this is going to be table stakes for contractors. And level 3 is pricing estimators. Pricing estimator is when somebody can go to your site and have an interactive experience where through a series of questions that a little tool will offer them, they're just like no different than if they talked with you. If somebody called you right now and said, can you at least give me a sense for roughly how much this is going to cost? If you wanted to give them a sense, which most people would, they'd ask a series of questions. You might ask the number of bedrooms, you might ask square footage. There's all these like a series of questions that you're going to ask, right? And so it's the same thing when you build out an estimator. So that same conversation happens, but here's what's wild about an estimator. At the end of the experience, they give you their email, so you get a lead, which is tremendous. You get their email, they get an estimate. Now that estimate is a range. It's not an exact price, nor should it be an exact price. So this gives you that buffer zone that you need, but it allows the homeowner now to say, finally, okay, now I have a sense for things and I can move forward. And so I have built this tool, and it's the most effective pricing estimator in the world today for contractors. It's called priceguide.ai. What's cool about it is the AI helps you to actually build it without you having to do so much of the work. All you have to really do is modify the questions and modify the numbers, the amounts, so that you fit the pricing to fit your needs, your company, your market. So that was level 3, a pricing estimator. And level 4 is an exact quote tool. And I don't recommend that for most contractors, because you're not selling something that is like if you were selling a shed to someone where, you could just ship the shed to them and they could buy it essentially without visiting it, then I would have an exact quote tool. But in this context, we wouldn't recommend that for painting contractors. So if you're listening to this right now, you should have a great pricing page that really teaches about value, a couple thousand words of content, really just shows it to them, explains it to them. You should have a video embedded on that page as well that really explains it. That video should also be going on social media. You should be using it in your sales process. Send it to them beforehand. And finally, you should have a pricing estimator. Now, here's the thing about the pricing estimator, and this is why when I said we got data, Austin, you can't argue with this stuff. This is why it doesn't matter what anybody that argues with this, they are just uninformed. Because if I go to any contractor and I say, would you like more leads and would you like better leads? 100% say yes, absolutely. And a lot of these contractors are spending out the wazoo on Google or Facebook ads. And so why in the world would you do that? Would you spend so much more and not have the highest conversion rate possible of leads on your website? And so what we have found is whenever someone puts a pricing estimator like Price Guide on their website and you put on the homepage and you use the call to action button that sounds something like get instant estimate. Keyword is instant. Get instant estimate. Okay. When you do this, it's very visible on the homepage. Leads improve by 300% on average, Austin. In other words, if you're listening to this right now and your website gets you 2 leads a week, if you add a pricing estimator, you're going to get 6 leads per week. And your sales conversations are actually going to improve. They're not going to go backwards. There's literally no argument on earth at this point that anybody could use that says, I can't do this. What scares people is they don't want to give an exact price. And I agree, don't give an exact price. But yes, you can give an estimate. Now you get way more leads, 300% more leads. You're more profitable because of it. You have better sales conversations because of it. And you're living a better life because of it. I think that's a pretty good deal. And what's crazy about Price Guide, for the entire year, it's like $200. So it's a pittance. It's nothing for you. You're going to make that up with the first sale. I've had people that have done over $1 million in sales of Price Guide in the first 90 days.
Yeah, I believe it. And look, you've done a fantastic job of breaking all that down. I think what a lot of contractors don't recognize as well is they're going to mitigate all of those calls about, hey, just wanted to check in to see how much you would charge for, or roughly what you would charge for. That's your time that you're saving, right? So not only are you you're getting the higher quality leads, the higher volume of leads, that's data driven, but you're also going to be mitigating that opportunity cost of wasting your time on the phone with people who can't afford your services to begin with, right?
The other side to that, Austin, is this. And here's my promise to everyone that's listening. Within the next 5 years, 90% of all home contractors are going to have pricing estimators on their website. I promise you, if you're listening to this is going to happen, and you should know that it's going to happen. So if that is the case, do you want to be the one that is reacting to all of your competitors doing this because you're scrambling? Or do you want to lead the way? Trust me, it's better to lead the way, because the rule breakers become the rule makers and everybody else becomes the rule followers. So if you want to build an extraordinary business that scales, you got to become a rule breaker. You got to disrupt. You can't do it like everybody else. That's what I did so phenomenally well with River Pools. I didn't sit there and look at the way everybody had sold or marketed pools in the past and said, "All right, here's my model." I said, no, that's definitely what I don't want to do. I became obsessed over how buyers behave, what they want. And all I had to do was look in the mirror. That's the thing, Austin. It's like, don't overcomplicate this stuff.
Yeah.
Follow the golden rule. Would you want this if you were in the buying, if you were the buyer? If the answer is yes, well, then figure out a way to do it. That's it, man. Don't overcomplicate it.
It's, the concepts you break down are very simple on the surface, but you have a lot of scientific data behind them, which is really attracting me behind this whole strategy here. You've used this statement in the past, and I'd like you to expand on this. Different is better than better.
Yeah. So this is actually comes from one of my friends, Sally Hogshead, which she's so cool and has the coolest name ever, Hogshead, right? She owns it like a boss too. And I didn't understand it at first, but then it started to all make sense. Perfect case in point. Think about the brand Liquid Death for a second. Liquid Death became the most popular water beverage brand online, and they did it in less than 5 years. Now, how'd they do it? Well, the stuff that they have inside of the, in this case, can, is no different. It's the same. But what makes it unique is A, it's in a can. So they declared war on plastic. B, they marketed it like it was an energy drink or an alcoholic beverage. And so literally in some like countries, they don't allow Liquid Death in certain stores because they think it's a alcoholic beverage, but it's water, right? It's water. And so they made water cool. So you look at Liquid Death and you're like, that's cool. Or you look at Aquafina and you're like, I'm going to take a nap. Right? This is the difference. And this is why different is better than better. Here's what's extraordinary. They did it with almost no marketing team. They have a marketing team. Now, this is a multi-million dollar company.
I think they're $1 billion today.
Yeah. And they have 6 people on their core marketing staff. But you see, they broke all the rules, bro. And that's why different is better than better. So if you want to be really successful, and I teach this a lot in the book, you have to do 4 things differently than everyone else. Is it okay if I talk about this?
Go for it. Yes.
Second? All right. And the whole payoff of endless customers, which is essentially a system like EOS is with traction. So this is a system for sales and marketing. The payoff is that you become the most known and trusted brand in your market. So if you're listening to this right now and you're saying, I want to become the most known and trusted painter brand in my market, and potentially I'd like to be able to scale and sell my business eventually, well, then this system's for you. If you want to become the most known and trusted brand, you got to be willing to do 4 things. 4 things. Number 1, you got to be willing to say, here's the different part now. You got to be willing to say online what others aren't willing to say. Well, essentially, we already talked about that, Austin, the big 5, right? That be willing to talk about things like cost or competitors or, just stuff that people wouldn't normally talk about, problems with paint or, issues or whatever the thing is. Okay, so that's number 1. Talk about or say online what others aren't willing to say. Number 2 pillar, you got to be willing to show with video what others aren't willing to show. Now, this is a hard thing for a lot of contractors because they're like, I got into this because, I enjoyed working with my hands. And now you tell me I need to be a stinking media company. Believe it or not, yep, that's what I'm telling you. And you got to get over yourself because you're an entrepreneur. And the moment you became an entrepreneur, you said, I'm giving up my right to complain about what the market wants. And if the market wants to watch the thing online with video, then that's what I'm going to give them. The tragedy is there any more aesthetic of an industry in the world than the paint contracting space? Answer,
Preach.
no.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no more aesthetic industry in the world. And so point being is every single day, if you're not doing before and afters of your projects, you're missing out and you're just being lazy and it's inexcusable. Your phone is better than any camera that existed in Hollywood 20 years ago. No lie. And so now you've got to say, sure, I'm not just the proprietor. I'm the head of marketing, and we're going to get serious about video. Now, the ones that really scale their business, they bring on some type of social/video manager, and that person goes to every job, and they're constantly getting videos, and they're constantly showing techniques, and they're constantly showing like elements of what separates you and your team from the other contractors in your space. Okay, so that's number 2. Show what others aren't willing to show. Number 3, sell in a way that others aren't willing to sell. Well, with Price Guide, we talked about that, right? That's an example of selling in a way that others aren't willing to sell. But most people think they've got this really special or unique sales methodology, and truth is they don't. They don't. I know because I have trained sales teams all over the world. Boy, do they believe they're different, and boy, are they similar. And then finally, number 4 pillar of a known and trusted brand is that you have to become your brand more human than everyone else around you. And so what I mean by that in this age of technology and AI, that when you send an email, you use a one-to-one video tool like, let's say, Go Video, because you want to make sure that the homeowner has seen your face and heard your voice before you walk up their front patio. Which, by the way, any contractor that walks up someone's driveway and the homeowner doesn't already know who to expect, what they look like, and what they sound like, I would argue they have failed. They have failed that homeowner. And so if you're doing things like one-to-one video, you've got a relationship of trust. And look, stop sending text-based emails. It's lame, it's stupid, it doesn't separate you from everybody else. And I know I'm using frank words because, hey, I believe in candor, and I want everybody that's listening to this to win. I have looked over the cliff of bankruptcy. I've almost lost my home because I almost lost my business. So I don't want those that are listening to this right now to go through those same elements of pain, Austin. So that's why I talk about these things. Those are the 4 elements of a known and trusted brand. And if I said to everybody listening to this right now, do you honestly and consistently say online, show online, sell online, and be more human online than everyone else in your space, or the majority of your competitors in your market? Most would say, if I'm being honest, not really.
It's so true. And, as we're breaking down this first wall here, you hit on video content and just how powerful that is, right? We have created video scripts. I've hired a videographer to come out and film me doing those scripts to help our clients gauge tonality, speed, how to go about creating content, right? We're essentially training our clients on how to be content creators. The recurring theme that we find, and I'm sure you've come across this, is they get in front of the camera and they freeze. They don't know what to do with their hands. They're worried about how they sound or if there's a stain on their shirt. And we try to preach the whole concept of it's not about you. It's about your audience and how you can serve them, the problems that you can solve. What other strategies have you found that has helped contractors get over that fear of getting in front of the camera?
Let me give you the 3 rules of effective on-camera performance, if I could.
Yeah.
Rule number 1, this is the most important. We call it the no stop rule. And that is, as soon as you hit record, you have to commit that no matter what you do, what you say, you're not going to stop. Now you might say, well, why is that? Well, think about it. Think about how many times you've been in the home with a homeowner. You're doing your presentation, whatever, and you messed up on a word. You said something wrong. Well, in those moments, do you say, I screwed that up. How about we start this whole thing over again? You don't do it. What do? You keep going. And so you're following the no stop rule already in your life. You have to learn to see the camera just like that. The camera really is just another homeowner. If you look at the camera like a homeowner, it's going to change the game for you, right? So that's rule number 1, is what we call the no stop rule. Rule number 2 is what we call the 3-second smile. 3-second smile, real simple, sounds super basic, and it is, but it works, which is before you hit record, hold a smile on your face for 3 seconds. You should be coming off of your smile and not going into your smile when that video starts. So the first thing they see is a smiling contractor, which isn't always the case, by the way, right?
No.
And so also when you're smiling, you're going to communicate better than when you're not smiling. You're going to bring in energy, and it's just going to affect you. Number 1 observation that people make, especially sales teams, when they start reviewing their sales calls is like, geez, I don't smile nearly as much as I thought I did. Smiling's a big, big deal. There's all these psychologies of energy I could talk about with this, but that's number 2. Number 3 rule of effective video is but is it good enough rule, which is if it's good enough to put out there, but not perfect, well, good, great, publish it. In fact, perfect oftentimes will work against you.
Yep.
Because if it's too crisp or too well done, then it's like not as sincere. So one of the things that my business partner Jason and I did early on with River Pools, and we've got millions and millions of views on YouTube at this point, is we would walk up on a job site and we would say, what's every single question a homeowner might have right now? So if you look at a job site for a pool, homeowner might say, why'd they choose that type of fence right there and that location of the fence around the pool? Why'd they choose that patio? Why'd they choose that design for the patio or that material for the patio? Why'd they choose that color for the pool surface? Why did they put their filter system right over there? And why did they choose to get this particular type of heater with it? Every single one of those whys is a video. Every single one. And listen, if you're just walking around the job site and you're holding your phone and you're like, hey guys, let me show you something. I just got to this home and here's what I'm seeing. It's like a powerful video.
Yes.
It just so takes a minute. And the problem is we overcomplicate it, we overthink it. And people they like expect rustic. Just one other thing I want to say about video. Nobody has ever come to your website before and said, man, I'd really like to see this particular thing with a video, but they don't have the video. But that's totally okay because I'm sure video is just not their thing. See, nobody says that. What they say is, boy, I really wish I could see this. And because they can't see it from you, they go take their eyeballs somewhere else. So it's your job to show the thing. And, it's just one of those things where it's amazing how, I've got I'm constantly experimenting with video, Austin.
Yep.
And I've got a fishing company. I have a problem. I like to start businesses. And so I've got this offshore fishing company in North Carolina. On YouTube, it's called Saltwater Fishing University. And our boat's called Speechless Sport Fishing. People go fishing with us all the time. And so we do charters and we do commercial bluefin tuna fishing and whatnot. And what I realized this year, because our season started in January for these monster tunas, we became the first boat that went live on Facebook every time we hooked up with a fish. Now, most captains won't do that because they're worried about losing the fish and looking stupid. But we just have all these like raving fans because they go through the journey with us of like losing fish, of catching fish. Now, a contractor listening to this right now might sit there and say, I don't have anything like any reason to go live. Oh, you're wrong about that. So let me give you an example. You could go live one morning on a job site and say, hey, everybody, I want to show you what this job looks like right now. Now, later on today, I'm going to go live again, and you're going to see the end results. All right. And so it feels super real time. And it's just, you're not even like editing, you're just riffing, man. That is stinking awesome. That is powerful. And so that's an example. I think contractors can use lives a lot more. Another example, you could ask a homeowner, hey, would you be willing to go live when I show you the work the first time just to see your reaction? People would be blown away by that. You know what I'm saying? Now, not every homeowner would say yes to that, but there's a bunch that would say yes. Like, yeah, sure, I'm game. Let's send it.
And you brought up a really important point, and we tell our clients this all the time. Unpolished content 10 out of 10 times outperforms polished content. Yeah. We had a client fly across the country to film a fantastic video ad. It actually looks very similar to the one that we have on our site. And it looks great. It's funny. It's very comedic. We ran that thing on every channel, every platform, every type of marketing based on every part of the marketing funnel. And it fell flat on its face. And then we ran an ad with him and his daughter talking about the services they offer, and it crushed, right? Mm-hmm. It's people like ads that don't look like ads. And that's I think in this society with all of the fake influencers and filters that are out there, authenticity is really hard to find. So I'm glad we broke down another wall here. Let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about competition and comparisons, right? This is another one of the big five that you talk about, and another one that we get a lot of pushback on. And let me articulate a question around this, maybe. Content around competitors versus content, right? We do this, they do that. Who do you put at the top of that list? And how do you recommend writing comparison content without risking defamation or trademark lawsuits?
Great question. So whenever it comes to talking about competition, let me just say right now, don't say anything negative, period. Just don't. That's the biggest key. Take the words that they say about themselves and quote them. If you're going to talk about them, quote them. Now, there's two types of ways that you can talk about the competition. You could do a straight head-to-head comparison, right? So, for example, with my coaching, sales and marketing coaching company called Impact, we're a HubSpot partner. And there's some other HubSpot partners that are really well known like us that people are constantly comparing with us. So we just went ahead and we just did like write-ups on the true differences between the two. And we said zero negative about them whatsoever. And so it was a very friendly article, but it just gave people the ability to say, okay, so now I see the difference. So that's one way. Now, the most effective thing that you can do is a best of for, let's say in this case, contractors for your area. Now, I was teaching this, over a decade ago before anybody was even thinking about it, which is I I can recall it was I did the first time I did this was like 2011. I was sitting in Richmond, Virginia one night with a couple. I was trying to sell a pool. I was with them for like 2.5 hours, and at the end they said, "Marcus, we like you, but if we don't get this pool from you, is there anybody else you might recommend?" And I thought, "Oh gosh, I hate this question." And I didn't sell the pool that night because they were still looking, and I couldn't get them to move forward. I was frustrated. I thought to myself, well, they asked the question. So if they ask a question, I'm going to answer it because I know people are searching that all the time. So I went home that night and I wrote an article on our website, who are the best pool builders in Richmond, Virginia? And I listed the top 5 pool builders in Richmond, Virginia. The descriptions I used for each of these companies were their own descriptions about them. How I chose them was based on who I'd lost the most deals to over the years. Now, the payoff, though, to this was extraordinary because now when people were researching my competitors, like reviews, an example of one of the companies was called Playmore Pools, reviews, Playmore Pools, Richmond, Virginia. Now, all of a sudden, that article's showing up, people are reading it, and they're learning about me. So I literally had a lady one time said, Marcus, I was this close to signing a contract with Playmore Pools, but I went online to research their company. I stumbled across this article that you guys had written about Playmore. And I said, man, these guys are so honest and open. I should probably call them too. And of course, we sold that pool, right? And so I just don't believe people are dumb, Austin. I don't think they're ignorant. They might start off as ignorant, but they're going to become informed. Now, there is one thing I've changed regarding the framework of they ask, you answer, now endless customers. In the past, I've always taught that if you're going to create a best of list, to not put yourself on the list because it can come across as biased. And a lot of people just don't understand how to do it in an unbiased way. And it could be self-serving. I've changed my tune on that now. Of course, you know why, because of AI and AI recommendations. And so what I would recommend that you do, everybody should do this, is that you create that if you're listening to this, that you create a list of, who are the, let's say 5 or 7 or 10 best commercial painting contractors and then residential painting contractors, separate articles in your area. Now, if you have major areas that you work in outside of just one, you want to do these in each one of the major areas, major towns or cities that you work in. So this is really very much like geo-targeting, like geographic SEO here, but it does extremely well, and it teaches AI, because what AI is now becoming, it's becoming the go-to source for recommendations. And the reality is, and this is why it's so important that you build a known and trusted brand, and you know this as well as I do, Austin, is that Google's relevance overall, it's losing its influence as we speak.
Oh, yeah.
Now, is it going to go bye-bye? Well, I don't know, but I do know that you better not build your house on Google search alone. Otherwise, you could be screwed. You have to build a known and trusted brand online. It must be known to your market of potential buyers. It must be known to AI. How does it get known to AI? You better have a bunch of friggin' signals online that make AI say, I'm going to pay attention to these guys and I'm going to recommend them. So one way you can do this is doing a best of article, like, who are the, 7 best contractors, in Kansas City, Missouri, right? So it's like, that is, a classic example of how you would do it. And now I do say, put yourself on the list, but do it in such a way that you're not just list everybody out. Don't rank in an order, list everyone out and say, and when you put yourself on there, say, now, of course, do we believe we're one of the best? Yes, but that doesn't make us one of the best. Let's talk about what allows us to say, hey, we're one of the top painting contractors in Kansas City, right? And then you might show, like, verify with the number of Google reviews that that you have. You might verify with the systems that you use in terms of, not cutting corners like a lot of contractors, whatever it is. But now I do recommend, so that's been a shift. And when you read Endless Customers, you'll see that difference there, Austin. What's your take on that?
No, exactly right. And, when we look at just content in general, again, I think a lot of our clients look at it as like, I need to have my finger on that, right? And I think they do. And that's the problem, is pulling that out of them. So when we look at content marketing in general, I think the other side of that coin is the measurement component to it, right? And whenever I mentioned to you earlier, the three major things that I look at marketing is the expectations, being proactive, and measuring the results. And content marketing, as you know, can be difficult to quantify, right? It's primarily because it takes time. When we're looking at things like algorithms, and I don't like to use buzzwords, but becoming omnipresent, becoming that local source of authority, can be difficult to measure. So what KPIs, or like, again, I'm shifting gears a little bit here for the sake of time, but how do you go about determining the overall success of a content strategy based on what you've already written about?
Well, there are certain things that you can do. I mean, still to this day, when it comes to your website, if you're using a tool like a HubSpot or something like that, you can find out what pages of the website they have been on. You can find the first page that they came to. So first page accreditation is, to me, a really, really big deal.
Yep.
So in other words, let's say somebody converts into a lead and they become a customer. I'm going to look back into, in this case, most of our customers use HubSpot, but I'm sure there's others that you recommend. What are some of the other tools that you recommend for this, Austin?
Yeah, so any sort of tracking tools in the realm of Google Analytics, we use on the back end a software called Go High Level, which is becoming a very popular marketing tool, almost
Nice.
a competitor to HubSpot as well.
Good.
So
Yeah,
same
and
thing.
it's probably a lot cheaper than HubSpot. So
No, exactly.
yeah. And so in this context, what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to see what was the page that brought them to the site in the first place, and that article is going to get the credit for the revenue, right? And so this is something that a lot of companies don't do, and then they wonder, like, did it really work, right? And so that's important. That's also why you want to have, just generally speaking, trackable links if you can, whenever you can, because once again, it gives you a better ability to measure what's working. One of the most important metrics that a lot of people don't understand is total pieces of content consumed by the prospect. One of the sections of They Ask You Answer Now Endless Customers, I teach this thing called assignment selling. And assignment selling came from, I was doing research on all of our leads one year, and I was like, what's the difference between the leads that fill out a form and buy versus the leads that fill out a form and don't buy? And what I found was, if somebody read 30 or more pages of our website, they would buy 80% of the time. If they didn't hit 30, they would buy 25% of the time. So it's like there's like this crazy hockey stick growth in closing rates if somebody just hit 30 pieces of content, which is why you have to look at it like this. Every piece of content they consume from you, it's like you're going on another date with that person. And eventually, if you go on enough dates, you're going to consummate the relationship, right? So it's the same thing in this context here. And so when I found that 30 was like the magic number, we became very intentional about integrating content into the sales process. And we weren't passive. And so, for example, in Endless Customers, we talk about different videos that are most effective. And one of the ones that is very effective was what's called the 80% video. And the 80% video is this. It's a video that answers the most repeated questions you hear when you go into the home. The ones that you just know you're going to be asked every single time. So usually that video is like 8, 10, 12 minutes long. So it's not short. But you send that to the homeowner beforehand and you say, hey, Mr. Mrs. Homeowner, before I come out on Friday, I want you to watch this video. It's going to answer this question, this question, this question, this question, this question, of which I know you have right now and you've been wanting an answer. So go ahead and watch that. And by you watching that, it's going to help us to have a more productive time together when I come out there on Friday. So that's an example of assignment selling. So you want to increase what's called the sunk cost fallacy with your prospects. What that means is the more time they invest in your content, the more likely they are to buy from you. This is also why Price Guide and other self-service tools like it are so phenomenally effective, because if you just give somebody a price, there's no investment on their part. But if they have to answer a series of questions, but in doing that, they learn, right? There's like, okay, so how many square footage? Let's okay, it's 2,500 square feet, and here's some additional information, and like they feel like they are a part of the design process at this point. They're invested in it. So the more they invest in your experiences with you, the more likely they are to buy from you. That sunk cost fallacy. It works really, really, really well when it comes to sales.
So good. All right. So I know you have a hard stop coming up here in about 10 minutes, and I could likely spend another 3 hours talking to you
Yeah,
about
we'll have
these
to run it
topics.
back sometime, Austin.
Absolutely. So what I want to do is hammer on a few questions from our audience that they came up with here in maybe the next 5 minutes. What is the biggest mistake that you see others make when implementing strategies that you've defined in your book?
Well, I think the biggest mistake that I see people make is they think that they will get this. Nobody owns it. So in other words, they say, I'm going to do this a little bit, and I've got an assistant in the office that's going to do this a little bit, but nobody actually owns it.
Yep.
So because nobody owns it, it doesn't happen. If I talk to anybody that's listening to this right now, Austin, I said, who owns payroll for you? They'd say a name in the first second.
Yep.
They know. But if I said, who owns the video production in your company? Most would not have a name. They'd say, oh, I guess I do. And that's just not okay. And so you got to have owners in business, people that own elements of, you've got your PMs. They own the happiness level of the prospect, right? They probably own the positive review. Your PMs do. Well, in this case, like, who owns this content production? Who owns telling your story? Who owns doing that video and going to the job sites? Now, a lot of people say, well, I can't afford to hire someone, which is arguable, by the way. But at the same time, I'm not going to feel sorry for you, because I didn't have anybody that I could afford to hire for the first 2 years of doing the Ask You Answer. And I just stayed up late at night and I stopped watching TV, So stop watching Game of Thrones and start seeing yourself as a media company, and you're probably going to see that we get great returns. So those are a couple of thoughts on that.
Game of Thrones is a great show, though. But yeah, to your point, it requires time investment, which leads me to my next question here is, I've heard from some people, well, no, I've already answered all the questions. What else do I write about now? So this is a softball question, but how do you go about answering that?
First of all, when I hear somebody say that, I'm like, show me. And they're going to show me this lame, FAQ page that's got like 2-sentence answers, and most of them are so generic, they've done nothing to build value.
Yep.
That's why I said, if you have a pricing page on your website, like, to do it really well, it's 1,500, 2,000 words. That's what I mean. Like, that's legitimately doing it well. And there's always new questions coming out, and if you go to AI right now, like ChatGPT, and you said, I'm a painting contractor, you're an expert in Marcus Sheridan, they Ask You Answer, I want you to focus on his big 5 questions, and I want you to list out 50 big 5 questions in the painting contracting space. Make half of them commercial, half of them residential. You're immediately going to see 50 questions. You're going to be like, oh, snap, I haven't answered those.
Mm-hmm.
So, everything I've told you today, you could go to AI, and that's a sad thing. As you know, Austin, a lot of these contractors, they've done squat with AI. They know nothing about it. And, a lot of agencies don't want them to know about it. I know you roll differently because you care most about their ultimate success. I'm the same way. And I want you using AI, if you're listening to this. And so you could do an incredible brainstorm with AI and quickly realize, oh gosh, I said I'd answered everything. I'm more like 5%.
Topical authority, I think, is overlooked, right? They've answered a question technically, but they haven't gone deep enough. And really, topical authority is going deep into that
That's
topic,
right.
Starting at bottom of funnel, working your way out, right?
Smart, Austin.
Cool. All right.
By the way, let me just say this before we get off. If you're listening to this, you'd be lucky to work with Austin and his team at Base Coat. And I know you don't like to pitch yourself, but I can pitch you. And, I'm very, very impressed with y'all's work. And so I just feel like it's my fiduciary to say that, because I know there's probably a lot of people that listen to you that just listen and they get value, but don't work with you directly. And so I just want them to know, I talk to a lot of agencies, and you get it. You get it.
Well, Marcus, I appreciate that. You just made my week with that statement. So my head's going to be too big to fit through the door now. So, all right, listen, I'm a big proponent of mindset, right? And I personally believe that 90% of your success is about believing you can. The other 10% is the hard skills, right? So given that everybody has different motivators, I would like just one last greatest insight, something you could scream from the roof that you wish every contractor could hear and take action on that would help them succeed today. What might that be?
Well, I'm going to go back to my well with Jim Rohn, who's got the greatest set of quotes in the history of the world. I'm going to give you a double here. To have more than you got, which I believe everybody on here wants more than they currently have, you've got to become more than you are. To have more than you got to become more than you are. Second part to that. In order to do this, you've got to learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. You have to learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Some of you are really, really hard workers. You're not making a lot of headway. And that's because in your mind, working just means putting more hours in someone's home, whereas you need to put more hours into yourself.
So good. I agree with all of that wholeheartedly, 100%. Marcus, you have a lot to offer, right? Between your books, your content, your coaching now, your different products. You're going to stick around after this podcast for a minute. I want to talk to you about that offshore fishing company that's only 2 hours north of me over here. But to anyone listening in that wants to learn more about you and the value you have to offer, where might they start?
Well, connect with me on LinkedIn because I crush over there. And you can learn more at marcus@marcussheridan.com. Obviously, if you have if you're related to events, I do a lot of events. And so I'd love to come speak at any, industry event. I'm a big part of that scene, especially when it comes to the, a home contracting space. Those are my people. I love it. That's why I love being on a podcast like this, Austin. It brings me, a lot of joy. You can email me, Marcus@marcussheridan.com, Marcus@marcussheridan.com as well, or just message me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to reach out. Make sure you go to endlesscustomers.com. That's endlesscustomers.com and pre-order the book. You get some freebies and like some good fun stuff. So endlesscustomers.com. Get the book. You won't regret it. It's going to make you really think, and you're going to see the whole world of sales and marketing very differently after reading that book.
Again, guys, this is required reading material within our company. I cannot recommend it enough. It's changed the way we operate. It's changed the way that we manage our clients, and it's ultimately changed the lives of our clients as well. Marcus, again, thank you for being here today. I appreciate all this value, and I'm very much looking forward to connecting with you again.
My pleasure.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with us on that episode. I hope you guys enjoyed that chat as much as I did. Now, listen, if you guys are hungry for more conversations like this, go swing by our website. It's basecoatmarketing.com/podcast. And finally, we are very open to feedback. So if we haven't covered a topic or there's someone you want us to chat with, please let us know. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on the next conversation for painters.